Engage.
Hi guys! So today I'm reviewing episode 24. It's called We'll Always Have Paris. And I have to say, I watched this episode last night, and early on, whenever I started doing these videos, I kind of instituted a rule that I have to wait a day or so between watching the episode and reviewing it. Because early on, I would watch an episode, and then sometimes I would review it right afterwards, and I just didn't think that worked very well because sometimes I would think of, really interesting points to make, but I'd already recorded it, and I didn't want to re-record it. And then sometimes, my opinion would change a little bit, because if I really loved it at the beginning, sometimes I would start to find something wrong with it. If I really hated it, I'd be like, maybe I was a little bit harsh on it. And so I decided to start waiting a day in between. But this episode, I really, really wanted to review it last night because I just loved it so much. I was like, oh my god, I want to go review it, talk about how awesome it is. Because, I really like this episode. So, and like I said, it's called We'll Always Have Paris. And it starts out with Picard is hanging out in some sort of room on the Enterprise where they're fencing, because apparently they have a room for everything. And there's this weird kind of hiccup in time where a few seconds rewinds, and then they do it again and they realize it. And they're like, we just relived the last few seconds. So he goes up to the bridge and they get a distress call from Dr. Mannheim, and he's saying, come help me. And you're looking at Picard and you kind of think that he knows this guy. So they go to the coordinates that he set up, and there's another beacon. It says, go over here. So they go to this little planetoid. It's almost like an asteroid orbiting this binary star system. And they find Dr. Mannheim and his wife, and I actually can't remember what his wife's name is, I'm sorry, but he was having seizures, and it turns out he was doing experiments with time. And his wife was Picard's old love when Picard was young back in Paris. Him and this woman had a relationship, and we kind of relive this scene where he goes to the holodeck, and we find, he set up a day that he was supposed to meet her and go and meet her at this restaurant in Paris, and he didn't show up because he was scared. And you kind of get the feeling that's kind of been haunting him. So as you go through the episode, you're getting a few more little time hiccups, and Dr. Mannheim is having seizures, and you find out that he's opened a portal into another dimension by doing these experiments with time. And they have to close it, or else these repercussions are going to keep going out further and further, because they already have reports of disturbances happening out further out. So data goes down, and he uses antimatter, and he pours it into this kind of portal into another dimension, and he closes it, so they're all good. And Picard and Mannheim's wife have kind of a little moment at the end where Picard takes her to the holodeck, and they go to the place they were supposed to meet, and they kind of talk about it, and they're all right again, and it's like a We'll Always Have Paris moment. One thing I have to say, the title of this episode, We'll Always Have Paris, is a line from the Humphrey Bogart movie Casablanca, which is one of my all-time favorite movies. I absolutely love this movie. It's Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman, and it takes place in World War II Morocco and Casablanca. And there's a lot of things in this episode that either reference it directly, like the title, or are kind of mirror images to it. Because in Casablanca, Humphrey Bogart's character his name was Rick. He was waiting for this woman Ilsa at a train station, and she never showed up, and he never knew why, and he was bitter for 20 years later, or 20 years afterwards. And finally they meet, and they kind of talk about it, and they kind of figure out that, it's a whole movie that's going on if you guys haven't seen it, but they are able to recapture the love that they used to have, and even though they don't end up together, they're not bitter about it anymore. And that's exactly what happens in this episode, except it's reversed, where Picard is the one who didn't show up, and this woman was the one who was always wondering why he didn't come, and he was always kind of regretting it. And I just thought that was kind of interesting. And at the very end, Riker is talking about this bar at the planet that they're going to get shore leave, and he says, I don't remember its name, and Picard is like, it's called the Blue Parrot, which the Blue Parrot is the name of a bar that they go to in Casablanca. So I thought that was really interesting, because I didn't catch how strongly it mirrored that movie before, and I thought that was really interesting, because it's one of my favorite movies, and I really like that about it. But just as its own episode for its own sake, I also thought this was a really strong episode. I was it was kind of interesting because I didn't remember this episode at all. I remembered the title, but I really had no clue what it was about. So it was really cool going through it because most episodes, I have about, a little bit into it, even if it's, a third way and I remember exactly how it ends. But this one is like, I have no idea what happens in this episode. Like, I thought that the doctor was going to die. Like, I had no clue. So that was exciting. But on top of that, I like that, it had a very strong, scientifically based storyline and kind of a theme of having a not quite mad doctor, but obsessed doctor. It pops up a lot in The Next Generation. And sometimes it can be kind of overdone, but this episode, I thought it was really good because, it wasn't really overplayed. Like, he wasn't super crazy. He was just kind of committed and maybe a little bit obsessed, but he wasn't like, killing people to get what he wanted obsessed. It wasn't quite that bad. So, yeah, I didn't think that was overdone at all. And I really liked the relationship between Picard and his lost love because that kind of gives you an insight into Picard that you didn't get in the rest of the series. You didn't get it in The Naked Now, which was supposed to, reveal everyone's characters. You get it in not the last, yeah. No, what was it? Hang on. What was that episode called? I forget what it was called. It was the one where Picard was captured through the mind device by the Ferengi. I actually can't remember what it's called right now, sorry, but it was kind of trying to give you a look into Picard's past too, and it didn't really succeed either. So I thought that this one did a really good job with that because you kind of get a hint that Picard gave up something to have the great Starfleet career that he has. And to be captain of the Enterprise, he had to give up this relationship with this woman that he probably could have loved and started a family with and been happy with. And you can see that he kind of regrets that. And I think that that's a theme that's explored a lot throughout the rest of the show, because, his relationship with Beverly, his relationship with Wesley as kind of a father figure, and then, eventually his, in the fourth season or so, he goes and visits his brother on Earth, and he's estranged from his brother, but, he kind of gets that back a little bit because he gets reconciled with his brother and his brother's wife and their son. And so throughout the show, he gets a makeshift family kind of, and you see more and more that he wishes that he had one of his own. Especially in Generations, the first Next Generation movie where he goes into the Nexus and his ideal world is Christmas with his family and his brother's son and everything's happy, and this is the first step, I think, building towards that. And I think it makes Picard a lot more nuanced character. I mean, there's not a ton of stuff going on in this episode. It pretty much all takes place on the Enterprise. You have, Picard going to the holodeck in France. A lot of it takes place in sickbay, because that's where Dr. Mannheim is with his wife. And Picard and Riker and Data visit him there. And so there's not a whole lot of action going on. But as opposed to the last episode, The Skin of Evil, where I said that bothered me, that it was very stagnant, this didn't feel stagnant at all because you actually had a lot of character development. And you had a lot going on so you didn't need a ton of action. It was just a good, like, oh crap, we put a hole in the universe, how do we fix it? And I feel like there's other episodes kind of similar to that. It's like, oh, we were screwed up, or science went too far. But anyway, beyond those 2 points of that, it was heavily influenced by Casablanca, and it was really referencing it, and the fact that Picard really grew as a character. There's not a ton going on in this episode. The other characters aren't in it. I mean, they're in it. They're not in it a ton. They're not growing a whole lot. You kind of get this moment between Beverly and Deanna that Deanna comes in to sickbay to Dr. Mannheim, and she says, like, Beverly, I want to talk about this. And Beverly says, like, she is a ghost from Picard's past, and Beverly can't compete with that. And you kind of get the indication, oh, does she want to compete for Picard's affections? And, oh, sorry, I bumped the table there. But there's not a ton of indications of that throughout the episode. Beverly kind of gives Picard a couple looks over once in a while, like, oh, who is this woman? Why don't I know about her? That kind of thing. But you don't get, like, Beverly is, like, super jealous and annoying about it. But you see that, she does care for Picard. But overall, I think this is a really strong episode. Towards the end of the first season, I think you get a couple of good ones. I mean, Conspiracy is one coming up next, and I actually don't remember a ton about it. I think I remember liking it. I might, have to go back on that whenever I review that this coming week, but I feel like you do actually have a couple, decent episodes at the end of the first season. But anyway, that is it for this review. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and as always, feel free to leave me your thoughts on the episode, anything I might not have seen about it, anything you want to share. I always want to have people to discuss Star Trek with. So feel free, but thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more. So I'm sitting here alone on a Friday night with my cat watching Full Metal Alchemist. Pretty cool.